For around about 5 years now, if you have wanted a driving test in Great Britain, it's been a case of good luck finding one. They are usually all booked up. New tests become available at 6 AM on a Monday, but that is for 24 weeks into the future. That's nearly 6 months, and they get booked up quickly. The DVSA, they are the people who run the test. They are an executive agency of the government, and recently they consulted the public to find out what needs to change to the driving test booking system to try and solve this problem. Over 100,000 people responded, and 70.7% were in favour of only allowing learner drivers to book and manage their driving tests. You may not know this, but at the moment, driving instructors can also book and manage the learner's driving test. This opens the door to people buying tests and selling them on for a profit. Also, 50.8% were in favour of only allowing a maximum of 2 changes to a test. This limits the amount of times a test can be swapped from person to person or from one test centre to another. Heidi Alexander, the Secretary of State for Transport, announced these changes will take place in April 2026. So what does this mean? Well, I'm a driving instructor, and what I'm about to tell you I have never done, but I could do it if I wanted to. I take on a new pupil and I get their long driving licence number. Now I can book a driving test on that number. I may have no intention of them ever taking that test, but I've booked one, I'm holding on to that test. Next week, I get another new pupil, I get another driving licence number, and you can probably guess, I book another test on that number. And the best bit is I can swap the tests around between all the driving licence numbers, between the pupils, until I'm ready to use it. So I'm holding on to tests, I'm keeping those tests in stock, swapping them around until I'm ready to use it. This gives me control, but it means there are less tests available on the system for people who actually intend to use it, for people who actually want it. And I've got nothing to lose, because so long as I cancel that test before the deadline, which is really quite close to the test date, well, I get all my money back. Now let's be balanced and fair. If a driving instructor is using the system in this way, they can actually provide their pupil with a good service because they have a test in stock, and when their pupil is ready to do the test, there we go. There's a test, let's go and do it. And that was okay when there were plenty of tests to go round, but now there isn't. In my opinion, we should not be allowing people to hold on to tests ready for later. The tests on the system should be booked by the people who are actually intending to take it. To be fair, it's not just driving instructors holding on to tests. Learner drivers also hold on to tests, but each learner can only hold on to one test. These days, it's quite normal for a learner driver to pass the theory test and then go and book a practical test straight away, regardless of whether or not they know they are going to be ready by that date. They just want a date because they know there is a shortage. So what happens is, as soon as tests become available, people just buy them up, regardless of whether they know they're going to actually use that date. They're booking them up out of panic. And I understand why. It's because there's a shortage of tests. And this is why the changes that are being made, although they may help a bit, they are not going to solve this problem of having a long wait for driving tests. At least that's what I think. And this is why I think that. I could be wrong about this, and I hope I am. I've been teaching people to drive for close to 17 years now, and historically in that time I roughly remember how easy it was to get a test, whether it was a long wait or a short wait. I'm going to put some numbers on screen now. Now what these numbers represent is how many practical driving tests have been conducted by the DVSA for every theory test pass. Now this is quite an important number, because how many people pass the theory test gives you an idea of how many people need a practical test, because people who pass the theory are likely going to be wanting to look for a practical test soon, and not everybody passes their practical test first time, so you need more than one practical test for every theory test pass. And historically it seems that if the DVSA conduct between 1.8 and 1.9 practical driving tests per theory test pass, then the queue is stable. It's not really growing, it's not really shrinking, it's manageable. 2019 was a good year for driving tests. You could get a driving test fairly easily without too much of a wait. And the DVSA did 1.96 practical driving tests for every theory test pass. 2016, that wasn't such a good year. At the beginning of the year, I seem to recall the waiting time for a driving test being about 3 months or so, or even worse in some places. And they turned it around. By the end of the year, they had recruited loads of examiners and made it better, but at the beginning of the year, it was particularly bad. And that year, they averaged 1.64 practical driving tests per theory test pass. Not enough tests, not enough practical tests available for everyone who's passed the theory test. You're sitting down. Do you know how many practical tests were conducted last year per theory test pass? Actually, I'm going to pause me and not just tell you last year, but tell you the years during the shortage, when it's taken a long time to get a driving test. And as you can see, the figures are not good. Obviously, in 2020 and 2021, due to the lockdowns, the figures are very bad. But since then, it didn't really recover. The best we got was 1.65 in 2023. And although that's closer to normal, it is only a tiny bit better than 2016, and in 2016 that was a problem year for getting a driving test. There were long waits in 2016, and since 2023 it hasn't continued to improve. It's actually been getting worse. 2025 is just for the first quarter, that's April to June, because that's all we have data for, but looking at these figures, I would say it's not going to be getting better, it's going to be getting worse. So why are the DVSA doing less tests then? Well, they're not. They are actually doing more tests. What's happening is the number of people who are passing the theory test is increasing dramatically. On screen are some figures for theory test passes over the years. Of course, during the lockdown years, that's going to be different. But you can see a dramatic increase in the number of people passing their theory test, and therefore the number of people looking for a driving test. So why are so many people trying to pass their driving test at the moment? Well, I think it's partly due to the queue caused by the lockdowns. The lockdowns meant we lost about 1 million driving tests, which means the DVSA need to do 1 million extra tests to catch up. And when I look at the numbers before the lockdowns and after the lockdowns, it looks like they've done about 500,000 extra tests, more tests than they would normally do. I don't know if there is an official figure that they give for how many extra tests that they have done, but from what I can see, it looks like they've done about 500,000 extra tests. Well, 500,000 to go then. They need 1 million extra tests. They've done 500,000. There's still 500,000 extra tests needed. This means there aren't enough driving tests to go round, meaning it's taking people longer to pass their driving test. If they fail, they may have to wait 6 months to get the next one. Therefore, as the theory test is only valid for 2 years, more people are having to redo their theory test because it has expired. And that in part explains why more people are doing the theory test now, why there are more theory test passes. Therefore, more people wanting driving tests. That's why the theory test is such a good metric of trying to figure out how many practical tests are needed, because relatively up to date, 2 years, you know, it's not really up to date, but it's not really old. You can see how many people have passed the theory test, and then roughly, you know, how many people are trying to pass the practical test. Another likely reason for the increase in number of tests that are needed is due to net migration. Net migration since the lockdown seems to be significantly higher than it was before the lockdowns. And I don't know how many of these newcomers are going to need a driving test, need to pass the theory and then do the driving test, but I'm sure some of them will, and therefore that's going to be adding to the number of driving tests needed. So what is the solution? Well, I made a video about a year ago about why there is such a long wait for driving tests, what the possible solutions are, what may work and what may not work. I'll leave a link to that video up there. I highly recommend it. But essentially what we need is more examiners and therefore more tests. And this is why so many people blame the DVSA. But I don't. I actually think they are doing an excellent job. I think they're doing as much as they can. The problem is they're stuck in the mud. There's only so much they can do because they are an executive agency of the government and their employees are civil servants. And this is actually quite a big problem when it comes to trying to get more staff. Because if we had a shortage of plumbers, well, plumbers would start charging more because their services are going to be in high demand. And then more people are going to want to become plumbers because they're like, oh, they're earning more money, let's go and become a plumber. The same thing happened to driving instructors. Driving instructors started charging more money when they were in short supply, and more people became driving instructors. We need more examiners. The DVSA are recruiting more examiners, but many examiners are still leaving. It's a hard job for the money. Not many people understand how hard it can be. It looks like they're just sitting there, but they are doing a lot, and they can even get abuse. Just say they failed someone on their driving test. That's their job to do that. If they've not met the standard, they've got to fail them. Then they're in Tesco buying a bag of crisps and someone has a go at them. For some people, it's just not worth the money. And probably the strongest tool in the toolbox for recruitment, trying to get more people to do a certain job, is to offer more money. But the DVSA can't do that because examiners are civil servants. And if they were to pay their examiners more, they would have to pay all of the civil servants more. This is why some people believe the DVSA should be privatised. Privatised means that they're owned privately, probably for profit. If they were privatised, they could pay their examiners more, they could get examiners more quickly, they could react more quickly to how the market changes. It's probably going to cost you a bit more because their number one priority is going to need to be profit, because they're going to need to stay operational. You could say they're operating with a priority of safety, but their number one priority would need to be profit. That would need to come first. Whereas with the DVSA, which is under government control, their priority is clearly safety, driving standards and safety. They actually lose money, but they are slow. They can't react to how the market changes. And we end up in this situation where for years, we have a long wait for driving tests. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both sides, privatisation or nationalisation. When something's nationalised, it means it becomes part of the government. This channel is not about politics, although it may be sounding like that right now, but I'm not here to tell you which way is better. That one is up to you. The only left or right I'm going to give you on this channel is which way to turn when you're driving or who to give way to. The reason why I'm making this video is even though the DVSA are making changes to how the driving test is booked and managed, and in my opinion it's going to make it fairer, this long wait for driving tests, I can't see it being resolved within the next 3 years. And I hope I'm wrong. I sincerely hope that next year you can watch this video and go, you were wrong about that. I'd be happy about that. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy. That takes away a big stress from the owner of the car that you're using to practice your driving in, and via the link at the moment there's up to 35% off and a £20 gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. Also, if you do purchase a policy, there are rewards. You can get £20 at Sainsbury's. That's one of the rewards I got last time I purchased a policy, and a free drink, hot regular drink each month at Greggs. I don't actually use that, but my partner certainly does. Also, you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like. Do one quote and you can change the car to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. That's useful if you're shopping around for different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel. So thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos. And until the next one, cheerio.